Hello and welcome to part 2 on memory. We covered a whole lot on part 1. Part 2 is going to be much simpler. It is about recall and memory. And so let's get started. Your learning objective for this is really just to differentiate between the two. So let's start with recall. A recall is when information is reproduced from memories. So recall may be assisted when retrieval cues are presented. Basically, recall, the easiest way to remember this is it is pulling information out of nowhere. Basically, if I asked you a question on a test, but I didn't give you multiple choice answers, I was like a short answer or a fill in the blank, I would be asking you to recall that information without giving you any retrieval cues at all. But it can be assisted with retrieval cues. So let's talk about retrieval cues. Retrieval cues are basically reminders that facilitate retrieval of information from our memory. Retrieval cues are things like things that prompt you to remember. They make stored information pop into your mind when otherwise it may have not. You can have external cues, such as smell of a lit candle, that remind you of your grandma's, cinnamon apple pie. Retrieval cues can also be internal, such as feelings of sadness that remind you of when you broke up with your significant other. So we can have different kinds of retrieval cues. We also can have retrieval failure. Sometimes a person is not able to retrieve a memory that they have previously encoded. This can be due to the process of decay, a natural process that occurs when neural connections decline like an unused muscle. What do I always say in class? If you don't use it, that's right, you lose it. Basically, this is, though, related to what we call position effects. We're going to start with serial position effect, where information at the beginning and the end of a body of information is remembered more accurately than information in the middle of the body of information. Researchers often study the serial position effect by presenting a list of spoken or written words and then asking participants to recall all they can. But serial position makes a difference in all kinds of situations in which there is a series of stimuli. For example, if you met like 10 people at a party, you're more likely to remember the names of the first few people and the last few people than the people in the middle. Or let's say you went to a concert and you hear like 20 songs. You are more likely to remember what the band opened with or what it did as an encore than what it did halfway through. Psychologists actually have have terms for the specific effects at either end. They call these primacy effect and recency effect. So here's primacy effect. Again, the tendency to remember information at the beginning of the body of information better than the information that follows. For an example, like on a TV game show where people can win everything in a list of items they see. They usually at least remember, the first few items. More recent research has showed that wine tasters who tried 5 wines tended to prefer the first wine than that they tested, no matter which one that was. A similar study on food preference found basically the same results. The first food tasted disproportionately chosen as the favorite, even when the order was randomly determined. Recency effect is the tendency to remember information at the end of the body of information better than at the beginning of it. In contrast to the primacy effect, recency effect was demonstrated in a study of figure skating. I know all of you love figure skating, I'm sure. But skaters who went last usually received the best ratings from judges, even when their order was randomized according to their previous scores. So this really does affect a lot of things in our lives we just don't even think about. Another retrieval failure is called tip of the tongue phenomenon. Now, this is a very specific type of retrieval failure. It's the failure to retrieve a word from the memory combined with partial recall and the feeling that retrieval is imminent. We've all experienced tip of the tongue. You know, when you're thinking, oh my word, what is that word? It's on the tip of my tongue, or that name. And you feel like, oh, if I just give it long enough, it will come. I will remember it. Well, this process is not completely understood. There are two theories of why it occurs. The first is what they call the direct access perspective, which states that the memory is not strong enough to retrieve, but it's strong enough to trigger this state. Another theory, because remember everybody has a theory on everything in here, the inferential perspective says that the state occurs when the subject infers knowledge of the target word and tries to piece together different clues about the word that might not be accessible in memory. Like, you might know what that word means, or you might know, okay, it starts with an R. It's an R word. And so you're kind of sifting through the files of your brain trying to retrieve it or recall it from that. Recognition. Recognition is different from recall. It is when actually information is presented and provides a cue that the information has been seen before. This is usually much easier than recall. So this would be your multiple choice exams, because the idea is one of these answers is supposed to be the right answer, and so we should be able to recognize it. However, we can have false positives, which is error in recognitions. This is seen much more in eyewitness accounts. If you've ever witnessed, well, you can witness anything, it doesn't have to be a crime, but we of course use eyewitness accounts in crimes as witness testimony, all of those kinds of things. And so when it comes to eyewitness account, one of the biggest issues is false positives. So after you're done writing all this stuff down in this lecture, I've included two videos. There's a part 1 and a part 2. Super interesting. They are about a man and a woman. The woman, unfortunately, was raped when she was in college, and when she had shown a lineup of individuals, of suspects, she picked this gentleman by the name of Cotton. His last name was Cotton. And he was not guilty. He was innocent. However, the videos are going to explain how this false positive eyewitness account took place, because there is a science behind it. It's pretty fascinating. The woman who really specializes in this is actually from UC Irvine, and she is just... the science is pretty amazing. So, and it is interesting. I will tell you, if you're interested, there is a book called Picking Cotton. In this case, it is much better than the video, but it is a long book, and it tells their story, and it goes into much more detail than they have time on 60 Minutes to go into. But go ahead and click on the videos. Again, it's divided into 2 sections. Part 1 and part 2. You'll definitely, once you watch part 1, you'll want to follow up with part 2 because it kind of leaves you hanging. And so I hope you enjoy it.